Hi, I'm Joshua Montgomery, President and CEO of Mycroft AI. We're live on the air for the first time, this time with sound. Working on making sure that this works today. So today I was going to sit down and talk a little bit about free and open source software, the why of Mycroft, why we're here. Could you go ahead and mute the volume over there, please? Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the why of what we're doing. I'm going to talk about free and open source software. I'm going to talk a little bit about the various projects that are going on with Mycroft, and a little bit about what we're planning on doing with data related to data privacy and the publication of data for the broader open source community. So without further ado, I think we'll kind of start down that process. One of the things I wanted to lay out for the Mycroft community was the core principles that we're embracing here at the company and that we're hoping that the broader community will embrace related to the development of the Mycroft platform. Oftentimes with open projects, they run on waterfall schedules with releases being made over long time frames instead of over short time frames. And what that means is that various features aren't really rolled out to the public and tested until they're rolled out all at one time. I understand that a lot of projects really do use the agile methodology, but sometimes it can be very difficult for people who are using that software to keep up with the various different updates and make sure that their equipment is working properly. So we took the idea of free open source software, FOSS, and we decided to use those same letters to define an acronym that defines the core principles here at Mycroft. And the first one is FAST. If we're going to build something that's significant and that really meets the needs of the broader global community when it comes to virtual assistants, when it comes to vocal computing, sometimes it's called, we're going to need to iterate quickly and release new features very, very fast. It's something that we're working to do here at Mycroft and to build a culture around where we make changes to the software quickly and we iterate not based on what we think is the best feature or what we think is the best approach to the problem, but we iterate based on evidence. And that means collecting information on how users are using the technology. It means working in hand with our partners to get feedback on how the interactions are going, and working with general users of the software to identify which features are popular and need additional work and which features might be an impediment to using the software. And so for us, F stands for FAST. Of course, it also stands for free, which is something that we're committed to making sure that users can pull down Mycroft and use it wherever they choose without having to pay a single penny. In free open source software, O also stands for open, and we're using that same representation within the company. Openness is the foundation of our company. You know, there are a number of companies out there that are chasing this technology. Great teams from companies like Viv and SoundHound. There's a number of others. Kit.ai is another one. MindMeld is another one. And these are great teams that are pursuing answers to this problem within their developer teams and in a proprietary way. And we wish those companies the best of luck. I think that companies like Amazon and Apple are building fantastic technologies. But here at Mycroft, our goal is to build something that is open, that is owned by the public, and really enables people anywhere to take the software, change it, modify it, hack it, use it however they choose to use it, so that they can modify the software to meet their needs. And so the second core principle that we've been talking and we're trying to live up to here at Mycroft is openness. The next one for FOSS is source, and we are making the source code to Mycroft available in an open way. But for us, the first S is simple. One of the things, I think, one of the mistakes that open source communities have a tendency to make is because we are developers and we love getting down into the nitty-gritty of a technology and modifying it, customizing it to fit our needs. We feel that everybody else wants those same features. And anybody who's ever spent time with their mother or their father who might not be technically illiterate can tell you that adding more features, more buttons, more text areas, more modifications, more customizable settings isn't something that necessarily benefits the end user. In some cases, it confuses the user. It makes it harder for them to use the technology. And so for us, one of our guiding principles for building Mycroft is simple, that the interaction between the user and the technology should be simple. It should be natural. In an ideal world, when a user is using the technology we're building, they'll be having a conversation with their computer or with their device that mirrors the conversation that I would have with a normal person, that you speak naturally, the computer system interacts naturally, and there really aren't a lot of settings or changes or customizations that a general user needs to make to use that technology. Now, I want to make sure that I don't confuse this with being locked down or having those settings be unavailable. By being open, we are ensuring that the wider community can make use of the technology, and we're committed to building methods and systems that allow users to have access to the more advanced features. But for us, we want the general interaction with the general public to be as simple as possible, because that's how we gain adoption. That's how we get more people using the technology. That's how we provide the broader community with the ability to use it in an open way. And then the final S in free open source software is software, and we are a software company. We did build a reference device, and that device will ship sooner rather than later, not as soon as I would like. But all of the components are now in manufacturing. We are waiting for them all to show up so we can do final assembly and start shipping to our backers. We're really excited about that. But Mycroft is a software company. The idea for us has been and has always been being able to run anywhere. Our vision as a company, our vision statement is actually an artificial intelligence that runs anywhere and interacts just like a person. And so that's what we're trying to build. And so for us, the fourth letter, the S, is strong. And that really reminds us that the end goal of our effort is to build an artificial intelligence that is a strong AI, that when a user interacts with it, they cannot tell whether or not they're talking to a machine. And we understand that that is a lofty goal, and we also understand that that's not going to be achieved next week. But that is the destination for our team and the destination for our technology. And so today I really did want to walk through, as our first video presentation, I wanted to walk through the guiding principles of the organization so that everybody really does understand where we're headed with it and the principles that underlie our effort. That we're fast, we're open, we're building simple software, and our goal is a strong AI. Fast, open, simple, strong. So yeah, I thought I would start there. And then move on to some other subjects that we need to talk about a little bit as a community. The next subject that I'd really like to address is the idea of deep learning and data and artificial intelligence. So there are a number of companies out there today that are releasing fantastic deep learning frameworks and deep learning software that allows people to take big data sets and arrive at software that has insights into that data, that searches that data, that extrapolates that data, that gives us more information about that data, stuff like semantic analysis, speech to text, that are fantastic. And those open source, that open source software is really advancing the state of the art in machine learning across all industries. The one caveat that I have related to that is that the companies that are releasing the frameworks and the software have been very, very reticent to release the actual data that makes that software useful. And so if you release, for example, a deep learning framework related to speech, and you don't create a data set to go along with it, you put the user of that framework in a position where they have to go and find tagged speech data in order to train the AI. And there are a number of companies that have done that, and there are a number of open corpuses of data that are available to the community, but those corpuses of data are far from complete. They're very difficult to assemble in a lot of cases. And despite training technologies like Caldi and others using those data sets, the results have been speech-to-text systems that do not approach the level of accuracy that's possible and achievable within the companies that have access to these big data sets. And I think that particular item is really holding us back on the speech-to-text side, but I think it becomes even more important when we start talking about the way that users interact with computers. So, you know, if the end goal of the project is to have a computer system that interacts just like a person, and we're using machine learning to do intent parsing, to do sentiment analysis, to do speaker identification, and then to drive the overall conversation, we need a corpus of data as an open community that is available to everybody that is working on the software and not just the companies that are collecting it. At the same time, we have a lot of requirements related to privacy, related to keeping data local, and related to data ownership, especially within the open source community, that are very, very important. Privacy is an absolute right. People have the right to be private here in the United States. People have the right to be private in their papers, to be free of government intrusion or intrusion by others without a valid search warrant or a FISA warrant. You know, I would argue that that is a native human right, and that it doesn't just extend to people here in the United States. And so we need to come up with a system or a methodology that balances the need for open source communities to have large piles of data so that they can train and improve these software systems, with the fact that a lot of open source users and a lot of users in general are sensitive about privacy, and that those users have a right to privacy and a right to keep their data private. And so we're working here at Mycroft to develop policies that allow us to take incoming data where users have offered to share it and parse it in a way that secures those users' private information, and then publishing that data as a large corpus of data that can then be used by the broader open source community to improve the technology. Now, we've identified the problem, but we still haven't identified the answer 100%. We have some ideas surrounding differential privacy, but you can clearly see how there might be a problem if somebody with, let's say, a heavy accent speaks to the Mycroft platform and gives their name, their address, their social security number, and their bank account number in an audio sample. And a system that we put in place, and I'm not saying we're putting this system in place, this is a hypothetical situation, so let me make sure that I specify that. But let's say that we set up a system that it is taking user data, anonymizing it, and publishing it. And in this case, that system is unable to parse the incoming audio data to determine that it really does contain sensitive, private, personal information. In this hypothetical scenario, that data would be pushed into the broader data set and tagged by volunteers or tagged by paid employees, so that the deep learning algorithm could better understand users who have that accent. But clearly that's a violation of user privacy. Clearly that's a violation of the user's personal information, and clearly that's not something that we want to do. And so we have a lot of questions here within the company and within the broader community about exactly how we handle that. But we do understand that there is a need for a corpus of data, both related to speech to text, but also related to user interactions. How do we make the conversation more natural? The answer is probably that we feed a large corpus of conversations into a machine learning algorithm. That's fantastic if you're Slack and you have access to billions and billions of conversations that are flowing through your servers each day, and your privacy policy allows you to take those conversations and use them to improve machine learning. But in an open source community that's dedicated to privacy, we need to work to discover mechanisms and to deploy mechanisms that allow us to take that data and make it available for improving the technology, whether that means sandboxing the data and only allowing individuals who have an NDA and have signed privacy paperwork to access the raw data, but allowing the algorithms to access it to better train the machine learning, whether that means going through some kind of a review process of data as it comes into the stack. I don't have good answers to that question, but I do have an answer to one question, and that's that we are committed to being open. And so whatever we develop, we plan to develop in partnership with the community and deploy with the consent of the users so that we can improve the algorithm while still maintaining trust with the broader community that we're building. Which brings us to an interesting point. In March of this year, on the 17th, 18th, 19th, the Mycroft developers, everybody from the company, hopefully developers from our community, will be getting together in Kansas City to talk a little bit more about some of these issues and start working to set up policies and governance to make sure that we are indeed respecting our users' right to privacy, that we are indeed respecting the open ethos, and that we are working hand in hand with the community to build the technology, that this is not just a corporate sponsored technology. So we would welcome anyone from the community to come and join us in Kansas City for those 3 days, to meet with us, to see some keynotes from the various people who are developing for the platform, and then to sit down with us to have conversations about some of these important items. So those are the two issues that I really had today. I think that the one thing that I love to talk about a little bit is the AI XPrize. So for those of you who may not have been around when we announced this last year, but the Mycroft is one of the teams that's competing for the AI XPrize, which is a prize being awarded by the XPrize Foundation for significant achievements in the field of artificial intelligence. Here at Mycroft, we have our goal, building a strong AI, and in pursuing that goal, we think that we will be making significant contributions, and so we entered the competition. We're one of, I think the number is 156 teams that are competing for the prize, and here in April, that'll be limited down to, I believe, 78 teams. And so we're working pretty hard to put in the paperwork and to build the mechanisms that will allow us to go ahead and pursue and ideally to win that prize. We intend to win. And so folks who are interested in participating in what's going to be a fairly sizable open source effort to go and win that XPrize, please get in contact with us at our community page. It's community.mycroft.ai, and let us know that you have some interest. We have a lot of different things that need to take place in order for us to pursue that prize successfully, and would love to have engagement from the community. I would like to point out that that prize is a $5 million prize, and that here at Mycroft, we've committed to taking that prize money and distributing it amongst other open source projects so that they can pursue technologies that are important to the broader open source community. One of the other things I wanted to talk a little bit about was Mimic. Folks out there in the world are starting to adopt Mimic for everything from using Linux for the visually impaired to robotics, to we have people building it into speakers. There's people who built it into apps. Dr. Patel and her team of Vocality are using it to synthesize voices for people who have significant speech impediments. Those of you out there who are interested in using that technology, I'd encourage you to take it and use it. And we are looking for native speakers in a variety of different languages to start taking samples so that we can begin building mimic voices in other languages. In English, we're still looking for male and female American, but we would also be interested in accents for everything from the Bronx to Savannah, Georgia. So if you have an interesting accent or are interested in seeing your voice deployed through Creative Commons, we'd encourage you to come and talk to us. So I'm getting a couple questions now, so I thought I might get in and answer some of those. What new languages and when? So it's easier to answer what new languages than the when component. So the first couple of languages that we'd like to get to are Spanish and Mandarin because they are underserved languages, and they're languages that a vast majority of the people on the planet speak. But we also have in our target list French and German and Arabic. We would like to get to Hindi. We would like to get to Australian. I'm just kidding. I know they speak English in Australia. But it would be great to have an Australian accent in Mycroft. And then, of course, we'd like to get to some of the tonal languages. So Japanese and Korean would be high up on our priority list. In terms of when we get to those languages, that really comes down to what resources are available to us. If we have developers within the community that are interested in doing it and making an effort to do that, or we have corporate partners that are interested in sponsoring that work, we'll be able to move faster rather than slower. But as it stands today, it looks like foreign languages are going to take a little bit of time, especially on the speech synthesis side of things. I would love to be deploying our first foreign language by the end of the year, but there are no guarantees. It really comes down to the level of resources that are available, whether those are open source developers who are doing it in their spare time, or whether that's corporate developers who are doing it for their company. What can we expect of Mycroft in the near future? Total global domination. Now, in terms of the near future, we're deploying packages that allow us to install Mycroft on the Linux desktop. Has really been the big push for our team. We released a Raspberry Pi image in mid-January and had thousands and thousands and thousands of users pull that down and begin using it. As a result, we're beginning to get more contributions back to the community from people who are identifying and fixing bugs. You know, for us, it always has been a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. We can't really fully encourage the developer community to join the project and to make significant contributions until we've reached the point where the technology is useful and developers feel as though their time is well spent. But at the same time, we can't really make the technology 100% useful without developer resources. We've short-circuited that a little bit by hiring full-time developers and having them go out and develop key components of the technology. But now the goal for us is to reach the broader open source community and give those developers an important tool and inspire them to make contributes back to the platform. So what you can expect to see here in the next 3 to 4 weeks is installers for the KDE desktop. I think that's fairly far along, as well as GNOME. I've also instructed them to make RPMs and Debian packages that can be deployed easily within Ubuntu, Debian, the Fedora community. And so I think that you'll see some pretty significant progress there, as well as a little bit of progress in ease of use for the Mycroft platform. Will Mycroft work offline? Yes. Not today, but Mycroft will work offline. One of the things that we've identified as a need within the community, and not just the open source community, but the broader global community, is the ability to deploy an assistant that's completely independent of the broader internet. And that has a number of implications. For us, the real implications are personal privacy for people who want to deploy an agent that represents them and not some other company. But also privacy within the corporate enterprise, so that companies that want to deploy agents either within their enterprise or for their customers can deploy them independently of the Silicon Valley majors. And so that is a big push for us. We have a November timeline for getting speech-to-text working offline. Initially, that's probably going to require a GPU, so everybody should be fully aware of that. But we think that it is possible to make that technology work on a much smaller processor and still have high accuracy. And so we will be working to build that into embedded systems. So I think that you will see Mycroft working 100% offline by the end of the year. Probably in automotive is where that will start. But of course, people who have GPUs in their desktop should be able to use it there as well. The one caveat that I do have is that the technology itself is inherently limited if you do use it offline. Even the simplest query, like tell me what the weather is outside, unless I guess you build weather sensors into the outside of your home, is very difficult to answer without accessing an online API. That being said, that can be done over HTTP using an agent string that represents a browser and still preserves personal privacy. And then, of course, that could be done through a VPN that aggregates the traffic with a bunch of other users, or even through Tor, I guess. And so the answer to your question is yes, Mycroft will work offline. No, Mycroft will not work offline in April. but we do anticipate seeing that here within the next year. And that does bring up a really important point related to privacy and a concept called user agency, which is another thing that distinguishes Mycroft from the technologies that are being deployed by other companies. If you are using a technology like Alexa or Siri, the technology represents the company that owns it. And so if you are asking Alexa for information, or if you're asking Alexa to make a purchase, it's going to give you the answer that is in the best interests of Amazon and not in the best interest of you, the user. At Mycroft, we have a much different philosophy about the role of intelligent agents in the future of computing. We see a future where those intelligent agents represent their users in every aspect of their life. And so the same agent will answer your voicemail, that will answer your door, that will automate some of your email, that may interact with other people's voice agents. And it's important that the voice agents that people use, at least that they have a choice, that they can deploy a voice agent that represents them as the user and not the company that owns the agent. And so when they ask it, order me a gallon of milk, it orders them a gallon of milk from the best service that has the best price, that has the best delivery mechanisms for that user, and not for the company that deployed the agent. And so one of the ways that we think that we can create an agent that better represents users is by allowing users to keep their data offline if necessary, or to keep their data in a distributed repository. So think something like the blockchain. And so that's something that we're very committed to making happen, because 10 years from now, when you're working with an agent that's based on the Mycroft stack, and you might name the agent anything you want to name it. You could name it Sally, you could name it Samantha, you could name it Al. I recommend you don't use Al because of the keyword recognition stuff, but you kind of get the point. That agent will represent you, that agent will operate offline, and that agent will keep its data independent of the interweb. If I have Mycroft installed on multiple devices, will they be aware of one another? Yes. Once again, not in April, but that is a feature that we're interested in. Clearly, if you have two agents in the same room and you use the keyword, they need to figure out who you're speaking to. Actually, if you use the assistant from our friends at Google, and you have two assistants sitting in the same room, it'll actually trigger the one that is resident within the speaker and not the one that is resident within your phone. That becomes a problem when you're trying to make a phone call and the speaker is the one that keeps coming back to the end user. For us, yes, as long as those are resident in the same network or they're resident in the same account, we plan to create features that allow those devices to communicate. Initially, the goal is to create voice channels so that you can communicate from one to another. But eventually, those will work in concert with one another, both for music and for keyword recognition and for taking action on behalf of the user. On which AI will Mycroft operate? I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. We're using a variety of artificial intelligence stacks from Neoevolution, which is a stack developed by our developer, Jonathan Dorlins, to TensorFlow. They're using Caldi on the speech-to-text side of things. So there's a variety of machine learning technologies being used within it. We're not really married to any specific machine learning methodology. We're primarily focused on making sure that we have a big enough data set and that the agent itself responds in a timely and intelligent way to queries. We are looking for speakers for Mycroft World Congress. I did want to point out, if you go to our blog, you can find a link. If you're interested in talking about something that you built for Mycroft, or talking about a plan for Mycroft, or if you're interested in talking about some of the underlying technologies or how they're tied together, we would encourage you to contact us, and we'd be more than happy to hear you out and see if that's a fit for our upcoming World Congress. We'd love to have folks there. I think that's pretty much it. We're talking to a variety of open source projects today. We're really, really happy with the work that the KDE community has been doing with Mycroft. We've had a fantastic partnership with Ubuntu for almost a year now. We've been working with open source projects like EndlessM, who deploys a fantastic operating system that can be used all over the world and is now being used to help folks learn to code. And so we're really happy with all of the partners that we've been building. We're pretty happy to be working with the Techstars community, the 500 Startups community, and then there's a big announcement coming up soon about our ongoing partnership with Jaguar Land Rover to integrate Mycroft into the automobile market. So look out for that. I really appreciate all the time that everybody's given to the Mycroft team. I appreciate all of the software that's been submitted to the repo. We really appreciate the interest of the broader open source community and the support of the Free Software Foundation, who's identified Mycroft as one of the companies that's building open source software in an urgent field within the free and open source software community. I'd like to finish by just highlighting our principles one last time so that everybody really does take those home and internalize them. We're a fast company. We're making iterations quickly based on evidence. Openness is the foundation of our community. Simple is our design philosophy. We're trying to build software that's simple to use. And strong is our destination. We're building a strong artificial intelligence that runs anywhere and interacts just like a person. So thanks everybody so much. We'll try and do these a little bit more often in the future. And if you have questions, please feel free to ping me. I'm joshua.montgomery@mycroft.ai. Or you can always get into our forums and our Slack channel. We'd love to hear from you and to hear all the great things that you're doing within the Mycroft community. Thank you very much.